And we have a very interesting webinar. Before I hand it over to Frank and Daniel. So as I'm sure everyone here know, or at least most of the people, so we are RevHub. We are the largest community for revenue professionals in the Middle East. So we have 1,700 members and counting. If you want to add your friends, family, other account executives or revenue pros that you know, feel free. There's the link revhub.club. We are planning on very, very, very exciting stuff that are going to happen soon in September. We have live webinars, events, face-to-face, courses that we're going to build, and a lot of other surprises and initiatives. Feel encouraged to let other people join. And with that note, I will hand it over to Frank and Daniel. Daniel, he is the co-founder and CEO of Warmy and Anybiz. He's helping 30,000 companies build their domain score and warm up their emails. And we have Frank Saunders here as well. He is the CEO of Salesfoge, and he's actually building a very interesting go-to-market motion that's based on AI agents. So with that note, I will hand it over to Frank and Daniel. I will facilitate the conversation in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to just send the questions away. And we also have a very interesting offering for the community that Daniel will elaborate on soon.
Thank you so much, Itai. Really, really exciting to be here. And shalom, everyone. I'm from Israel, by the way. Frank.
Hey, everybody. Shalom to everybody. I'm not from Israel, but have ties to Israel one way or the other. I used to work actually for a company called Symbolweb, so that's my probably closest ties and experience with everything that happens in Israel and Tel Aviv. So yeah, hello everybody.
Amazing. So I will share our presentation and we will start. So we are going to talk about many interesting things today, but mainly we will focus on email deliverability, why it's important, and how to make your emails land in the inbox and not in the spam. This problem just growing year over year, and me and Frank from this industry, we had a great time together in Lithuania, so we know each other. We will going to share with you our knowledge, and hopefully you will learn and be much better with your emails. So let's get started. A few words about myself. I'm making entrepreneurship for over 10 years already. I failed a lot, did many mistakes in my life, but 4 years ago started 2 startups. We are over 85 employees. We are kind of bootstrapping. I really love challenges and love email deliverability, cold outreach sales. I also been in the Shark Tank in Israel. If you want to look for my name, it was a nice show. And Frank, tell us about yourself.
Maybe not 10 years of entrepreneurship, but over 10 years in sales, frontline sales, whether that's an account exec or being a VP sales in my prior essentially gig, VP sales of a sales team of about 50 people. And that's actually where I had this sort of epiphany around the fact that when you actually scale a company, doesn't matter whether you do that through cold email or other channels, you typically see this dilemma with just hiring a bunch of people, right? So back in the days was growth at all costs back in 2021. And I thought to myself, let's put an end to this. So there's a lot of inefficiencies, right? And email is still the main channel of acquisition, which is what we're talking here, guys, about. And it's just getting harder with every year. And there's a lot of different changes, even on a monthly basis. So kind of being always on top of, everything that's happening in the world of cold email, it's something I highly encourage you to do, especially if you're saying that email is not working for you. So yeah, looking forward to the chat. So we have a lot of good stuff for you guys.
Amazing. Okay, let's continue. Let me share with you some facts about emails and why it's still relevant, and it will be relevant probably forever because this industry is just growing. So the first email ever sent in 1971, and only in 25, see how many billions of emails sent every day, which is crazy. We have a very big spam problem. People are sending some of the time spam. Some people will claim that spam is when you send emails to someone that actually didn't want to receive from you, but this is not the conversation here. The subject line is something that matters, and Frank will talk about it. And the number of people that actually have an email address is just growing year over year, and this is why it's still relevant. It will remain relevant, but again, this is what we're talking about here, deliverability. If you're going to win the deliverability, which is the challenge here, you will always stay on top, and I will show you the ROI on emails, which is great. About the providers, probably only in Israel you are familiar with some of them, but there are over 300 different email providers. Some of them you are probably familiar with, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, and all the others, but in Israel you probably have Voila, these emails. So the deliverability is important. And why I'm sharing with you this information, because you want to focus on the main problem. For example, if most of your recipients are Gmail and Outlook, you focus on 75% and you want to deliver the emails on these providers. This is something for you to know, but there are so many out there. And this is something really, really important to remember. Every one of you has different businesses. Maybe you're owning a small business or outreach company or a startup, and you know how hard it's to make the go-to-market initiative in your business. The ROI on emails are the highest. Okay, so every $1 you spend, you get 36 on average. Compared to Google, today you can spend only on one click 50 USD, and obviously a click not converting. See the ROI. So it's really worth to invest in understanding the emails, understanding the email deliverability, understanding in this world, because you can make a lot of money for yourself, for your business. And this is an amazing channel, and this is what Frank said. This is so amazing to understand emails, and this is why we are here to tell you a few things that we learned over the years. Quick story how I started with email deliverability and how I fell in love with emails. Back then, one of the things that I started doing as an entrepreneur, I was selling on Amazon when it was a boom, and it was really good time for me. But one day I had a lot of products in the warehouses of Amazon, thousands of products, and I wanted to sell these products to physical stores across the US. So I started to think, what should I do to sell these products in the warehouses of Amazon to the stores? And what I did, I actually started to send emails. I started to send a lot of emails, and some of the emails I saw that nobody is replying, and I couldn't understand why people are not replying to me. And I went deeper and I understood there is a problem. Probably emails are going to spam, and it's not obvious to land in the inbox. So all my years of learning in the university and then in the military, I served on one of the tech units. I said, I want to solve this problem once and for all. And this is how I started this technology. I did it with my brother. We're both tech guys, and we started Warmy, which solved for us the email deliverability problem. And then we showed it to the world, and this is how everything started, our love with email deliverability. As of today, we are one of the biggest companies focusing only on this problem. This is the only thing we are doing. We are going almost to every show around the world about email deliverability. We are always on top of this information, and this is exciting because there is no exact playbook what to do, because these rules, as Frank said, every year is changing, and nobody putting an article and telling you this is the change, this is what you need to do. So it's something they're always researching in the company and improving. And my biggest dream is to send the first email ever from the Everest. I did only the base camp as of today. I hope next year in May I'm going to go to the top and send the first email from the Everest. I hope I will make my dream come true. And why deliverability matters: over 100 million only in the US every day lost because emails are landing in spam. See how much money businesses are losing just because of emails going to spam. It's crazy. And on the other side, we can stay optimistic, because if you will be on top of it, and I'm telling you, I just came from New York from a show about email senders, heavy email senders that are sending over 1 million emails a day. And I saw with my eyes a business of two people making an income every day of $200,000 every single day. A business of two people is crazy, only by sending emails. But they are experts, top experts in email deliverability. So, okay, Frank, tell us.
So yeah, just to kind of double down. So email is kind of really tough. And I think whenever I talk to a bunch of different people to help you get your head right, what actually impacts success is, typically I look at it from what I call the 4 pillars standpoint on where you need to invest. Typically people just invest in one or the 2 areas and then they forget the other ones. So for everybody to be on the same page, to me, in my head, this is the most important typically piece of information. So number 1 is, this is coming more from the cold email perspective, definitely is the infrastructure. So Daniel touched upon what are the ESPs that are being used. So ESP means email service provider. What are the email service providers being used? And naturally, what is being used on the receiving front and what is being used on the sending front. But infrastructure as a topic itself is a very big topic. It's a market in itself right now. You can buy Google accounts, you can buy Microsoft accounts, you can buy SMTP-based accounts, etc., and then they're all different and so on and so forth. Even domain registrars have an impact and domain extensions have an impact. But essentially, it's a whole topic in itself. Managing infrastructure to be successful is a big topic, and it has this even more market. Now, the other thing that impacts hugely whether you actually land in spam or not land in spam, essentially what goes into the copy, the words that you use. Some words can trigger spam filters, links can trigger spam filters, and depending on whether you're penetrating Fortune 500 companies or other types of companies, they also use anti-spam softwares, where if you mention in this particular word, then you will land in spam or quarantine, etc. Like, there are different things that happen. So copy is a huge thing, even to an extent where if you're sending a shorter, even email copy, say to Microsoft 365 today, you actually are more likely to land in the primary mailbox rather than sending a very long email. So copy is super, super crucial, and there's a lot of investment that needs to be done on the copy front. Data just means people that you're reaching out. You may have good copy, good infrastructure, but if you're reaching out to the wrong people, they don't want to hear from you, maybe want to start with some sort of a signal. You need to be sending it to the right people, because if you're sending it to the wrong people, everything will die. And then the last piece is the orchestration. Let's call it the strategy. How you actually execute cold email. There's other things that impact. So for example, are we reaching out to multiple people at an account, multi-channel? So there's other channels that actually can increase the performance of cold email. Let's say if you are touching people on LinkedIn or you're actually cold calling, it actually boosts the deliverability and results on cold email if these other channels are active. And pacing is also important. Are we sending 10 emails in a week, or are we just sending one email in a week, right? So pacing, how aggressive are we going at a particular prospect? Think of it this way. How many emails even does it take you guys to report somebody as spam? If you're receiving an email every single day, you're probably very likely. And how many emails does it take you to actually report somebody as spam? So all these things you need to think about, but essentially, again, just to break it down, infrastructure, copy, data, and how you orchestrate or how you execute essentially the campaigns, super, super important.
Frank, what is the risk if I will send an email to someone that is not relevant? I just started my own company. I don't know who is my ICP, and I'm starting to send emails just, blasting. What is the risk in terms of deliverability? What is the risk for the reputation of the company as a company, not as a reputation of deliverability?
We all, I think, get guys a bunch of cold emails. Some are relevant, and then a lot of them are not relevant. Let's say 90%. That's how you have to think about it from a kind of user standpoint, right? It's not relevant to me. I'm kind of savvy user, personally, right? So I know that if I'm not gonna do something right now, I know I'm gonna receive a second email. I know I'm in the sequence. So what do you typically do? You can either ignore that, you report it as spam, or you go and just block. But generally speaking, you're definitely going to be reported as spam. So be a good human, essentially. Do not send emails to irrelevant people, because it will impact negatively. And then the negative impact essentially is that your infrastructure that you set up will be degrading, will be essentially what's called typically burn. You'll be burning your infrastructure, and you'll burn it to an extent where, yes, your emails will start landing just spam across the further sense, and you don't want that to happen. Sure, you can switch on the warm-up, etc., but if you're going to keep on killing your infrastructure all the time by sending really bad emails or emails to the wrong people, you're just going to keep on dying when it comes to infrastructure. So nothing will save you. So this is why all of these things are super, super important, that you invest in all these areas. Yeah.
Frank, I'll ask a question, two questions that we got in the chat. So the first one was actually about the graphics and the infographics that you showed about the numbers, Daniel. So Julie asked, did the figures included cold email plus newsletter plus nurturing email, or just cold emails? About the information that you showed before, the figures.
All emails, as far as I understand it.
All emails.
Yeah.
Okay.
All email. Yeah.
And the next question was by Shall Have It. So how does the multi-channel approach affect deliverability to inbox?
Think of it this way. If you're in sales, and I assume a lot of you guys are in sales, most of you also would agree that when you activate other channels, whether that's social, etc., and these channels run on top of email as a channel starts to perform better. It's the same kind of notion when you have, let's say, strong social presence on LinkedIn, or you have website is very solid, or you essentially are somebody, right? And you have these assets to back you up. We see better performance on email as a channel. And then vice versa. Essentially, let's say if you are a startup, you just started your company and you do nothing apart from sending cold emails, your performance will not be that great, right? Because you're essentially nobody, let's say on social, your website doesn't look great, you have no track record, right? You just started the company. The results will be lower than somebody that has, running multi-channel ads running or other things, right? So multi-channel does have an impact when that is running on cold email as a channel and its performance.
Great, thank you. And Frank, you didn't answer my second question, but try to make it short. People are just starting their own company, and we see it a lot. They're afraid to send a lot of emails and say, I don't want to send cold emails. I will destroy the reputation of my own brand. What do you think about that?
A few stats from, especially companies in the US and Europe. I mean, ultimately, the majority of companies generate actually a lot of their revenue through outbound. Outbound means cold email, cold calling, etc. If you have a product where you're solving a particular pain for a specific audience, then that is not classified, if somebody wants to classify it as spam, but that is classified as an email that you're reaching out about helping the user to solve their pain. But you want to be also respectful in a way that, you're also giving the mechanism for them to opt out. But as long as there's a legitimate reason for you to reach out, I can't come up with an example, but essentially, let's say a finance department that you have a good signal that they have issues with, let's say, reconciliation, and you're selling a software that automatically reconciles invoices, etc. You build a software that solves a particular problem, and that's the basis of why you're reaching out to that head of finance or whatever to help them solve that problem. What you should not be doing is just generally, sending an email about something that's like super, super generic. So for example, something that's super generic is where you would send out an email, you say, hey, are you hiring currently for software engineers? So you do that based on kind of no signal whatsoever. So a signal-based outreach is, and what will work and what will actually improve your deliverability and you will not be perceived negatively is, let's say you are hiring for software engineers, let's say on LinkedIn, and you use that as a signal to actually engage with the company, then to ask, hey, I saw that you are hiring for engineers and I can help you solve that problem. And that is much better way to do outreach than just blasting without any sort of signaling, essentially, whatsoever.
I would say the people that some hard feelings about sending cold emails, guys, you are working for a business or running a business. Business made to make money. You don't need to be afraid. Everything will be fine. Or you make money or nothing. So just do that. Don't be afraid. Let's continue. Another thing that is very, very important in addition to what Frank said is the domain and the IP reputation. And this is a bit deeper level of infrastructure that Frank mentioned. The reputation of the domain and the IP is kind of the score. Actually, there are 4 scores for each one of them of your domain and IP. And if it's not good enough and if it's not high enough, the deliverability will be very bad. And how to build actually the reputation of your domain and IP is by a process called Warm-up. It's a process that helps new domains and IPs to build this reputation. Is like going to the gym, right? At the beginning, you want to go to the gym and build some muscles. So this is what the process of the warm-up is doing. And the second thing that the warm-up is doing is keeping and maintaining this domain and IP reputation in shape. Again, like going to the gym. So when you are sending cold emails, you're like eating junk food. When you do the warm-up, you're going to the gym. And the balance between them keep your infrastructure, which is the domain and IP and everything around it, in a good shape. This is what actually Warmy does, and this is what we're all about in what we are doing. So building the reputation of IP and domains. We have users having thousands of different domains. So it's depending on what you are sending, to whom, B2B, B2C, the volumes, the industry, so many things impacts on the infrastructure you're going to choose. And Frank having expertise in that, but it's very important to build the reputation around it. And how you actually knows if the reputation is good or bad, there is a judge, the judge called Google Postmaster for Gmail and SNDS for Outlook. And this is a tool from Google. Actually, Google give you the score, not tools like Warmy or other tools or Salesfoge. Google give you the score, and you can believe probably to Google. And the tool called Google Postmaster, this is the link. You can go there, put your domains. Some of the time you will not see data. For new domains, you will not see data. If you are not sending enough emails, you will not see data. Many things can impact, but in general, this is the judge, this is the doctor that can tell you if everything is okay or not. So for Google, you use Google Postmaster. For Outlook, SNDS. This is the next step to understand deeper email deliverability. I just also wanted to say before, just go to Upwork and see how much money it takes and deliverability expert per hour. So I think it's worth to understand deliverability very well from all the aspects. So again, just to summarize, Google Postmaster, and here is the link. Register your domain. As I said, some of the time you will not see data, but you don't have enough data because you didn't send enough emails or domain is too new. But if you will see, I will strongly suggest to track what is happening there.
Just one addition there that you mentioned around positive signals on warm-up. So guys, think of it this way, because some people, there's also a lot of debate on the internet whether warm-up works. So if you don't run warm-up, essentially you only have negative signals, and negative signals just will degrade your email infrastructure. So it's very important that you counter the negative signals that you are getting, because ultimately when you set up different domains for your business, etc., the reason why you have these multiple secondary domains, and we're going to go into that in a bit, is so that your primary domain doesn't get burned. And like warm-up is super important that you have always these strong signals, especially with the two main ESPs, Google, Microsoft. And if you're not going to do it, we typically say 2 to 4 weeks at least before you send out the first cold email, you want to make sure you always have these positive signals. Like they have to be in place. It has to keep on running, which is why something like Warmy is very important. Like you always have to keep it on, because the moment you switch off, you're always getting these negative signals against your infrastructure. So you have to always balance it out. So it's always like signaling, right? Daniel calls it positive engagement, but it's like a signal essentially. So you always
Why it's negative? Why it's negative when you sell cold emails? What do you mean by negative? What can be wrong when I just send email?
So like spam reports, any form of negative behavior behavior by the receiving email service provider or the company essentially burns your infrastructure, right? And you need to counterbalance that, right? So you'll see this exactly. Yeah, you'll see the spam rates, but there's also other things that can happen. But ultimately, you need this friction essentially, right, that you create every time when you send a cold email, and you just want to make sure you're maximizing your chances of landing in the primary, and that's why warm-up is like super, super crucial, and it will always, remain as a thing. So it's like as a default thing. So if anybody's sending cold email, like any form of actually email today, warm-up is a thing that I always ask, like, are you doing any warm-up? And if the answer is no, I'm like very surprised. So the only reason why I would say probably, like personally, why maybe warm-up is not a thing is when you're just sending a very low number of email. And what is low? Like, it's up to everybody, but if somebody says, Frank, I'm in enterprise sales and I send maybe 10, 20 emails a week, net new emails, that's not a lot. Like, you don't need to think about these things, but like whenever you're looking to any form of scaling and acceleration, right, means you're going to increase the number of, let's say, negative signals, spam reports, etc. So you need to counter that, right? But so there are exceptions where I think warm-up maybe is not necessary, but like the volume is like tiny, right? So then you don't really have to worry about it. So yeah, I just want to add that, so just kind of go slightly deeper into the warm-up, because some people may just suddenly send 10, 20 emails and they maybe don't necessarily need that. But typically everybody is always scaling.
Thank you, Frank. And in Google Postmaster, by the way, you can see the percentage of people reporting you as spam. Okay, so you can track it as well, which is very, very important.
So what's the percentage that you typically stay to be under on average?
Your goal is to stay less than 3 spam reports out of 1,000. Otherwise, Google start to playing with your domain reputation. So 3 out of 1,000, then you will be safe. But again, it's not the rule as Google reported. This is what Google reported, which will make you trouble. But from our research, we did experiment. We clicked on more than 3 out of 1,000, and still the domain reputation was good enough. But according to Google, this is what is recommended.
Cool. Alrighty, so we're gonna go into these different pillars that are outlined. So I'm gonna cover these bits. So this essentially, if you don't reach the primary inbox, nothing else really matters. Doesn't matter what you do. So landing in the spam folder, you're losing money, just like Daniel mentioned. You lose a ton of money. Everybody loses. So, and looking after your infrastructure is like super, super important. So like warm-up is just one of the definitely things. Now, if you are doing cold email, and I know some people aren't here in the audience, but if you are doing any form of cold email and you're looking to really scale, meaning because you have a huge TAM, you have thousands of potential accounts to reach out, you need to set up typically what's called secondary domains, so you're not putting your primary business domain at risk. So an example of a secondary domain would be, let's say if I have a domain called Warmy.io, I would want to get a lookalike domain which has a prefix of postfix, for example, trywarmy.io or getwarmy.io or teamwarmy.io, right? So same with Salesforge, etc. But it's a prefix, a postfix that you set up, and you want to make sure you have these domains. How many domains? It really depends on how much of activity you want to run. And again, this is specifically for cold emailing. The way that things work, or maybe on other email flows, is different. So the other thing that I highly recommend, so apart from thinking about that you need additional domains apart from your primary domain, is also really diversify across more than one domain registrar. So we have a lot of data where we see that when you do business just with one domain registrars, you can have definitely issues. So when we see that actually users, when they actually do relatively big scaling, when they diversify across 2 or 3 registrars, they have ultimately fewer problems and better deliverabilities. And then the same thing, something I think I mentioned in maybe early on, but you don't just run across, say, Google or Microsoft or SMTP, any form of accounts. But again, depending on the volume, you set up anywhere between 2 to 4 email service providers that you're leveraging to engage with your prospect. So like Daniel mentioned, about 75% of ESP traffic is across Google, Microsoft. I would typically say, sure, just set up maybe 60 to 80%, right, maybe across Google and Microsoft, and the rest it could be SMTP. But like ultimately, you wanna diversify. And this setup really depends on which industry you are in, and who are you sending to, and what are their sort of ESPs that they typically use. Do they use a lot of anti-spam software, etc.? So like what sort of combination, it really kind of depends. So you can ask me later, maybe on your setup, if you're really curious in that. Now, the other thing which is super important to know, we operate multiple infrastructures and we can see what people typically buy. Daniel, I think, also sees in the warm-up pool what sort of domains are set up. But if you're from a cold email standpoint, because most of the internet was built on .com, psychologically, users are also less likely to report the .com domain. So that's one thing why you maybe want to get .com domains. But the other thing is that there's also the fewest number of any form of restrictions on .com domains. So that's why by default, when somebody says what sort of top level domain extension I should be buying, typically you would just say just buy .coms, like .coms, and forget about anything else. There are some exceptions where you're looking to penetrate, let's say, a market like the UK, you can buy .co.uk. If you're looking to penetrate Germany, .de, .fr. So there's data to suggest actually that we see actually performance much better in the world of cold email when you set up local geo-specific domains over the .com domains, due to naturally, if you're in Germany, you're assuming this is a German business, even though it's not, but you have a .de extension at the end. We do see actually higher reply rates by having this sort of strategy. Now, the other thing, which is kind of the boring stuff, so something that you can do in a lot of tools, but make sure you have these boring things when you set up these infrastructures that are set up correctly, SPF, DKIM, DMARC. It is very boring stuff, but there are softwares out there we also have where you can just automate this and kind of be taken care. But without this being set up correctly, again, your emails will be landing in spam. So it's super, super important. Now, the other thing is when you set up these domains is to think about what is the typical ratio sort of domain to mailboxes. So how many really email accounts can I set up? And typically in the industry, most of the people that you speak to, or most people that you're going to see on LinkedIn, and whenever they talk anything about cold email, typically the advice is like 2 or 3 mailboxes, and that's something that everybody does. So it's not like my advice, it's just something that industry typically goes with, unless Google, Microsoft will change maybe some of the things, right? So, but right now it's still sort of 2 or 3 mailboxes that you'll set up secondary domain. But really what you want to do when you have this one domain, you want to be sending a maximum of 100 cold emails per domain per day. That's what you that's really the max. And we're talking about cold emails. On top of that, you have the warm-up emails. You may have some replies going back and forth, right? So there's definitely more than that. But just think of it that a domain can't really handle more than 100. And that's a typical recommendation in the world of cold email. Now, use reputable platforms like Warmy. Now, this is to say, essentially, there are a lot of kind of solutions for warm-up, but you want to go with what's called reputable platform, because the way that the warm-up works, it has to work correctly. So there's a lot of kind of things that happen behind the scenes that Daniel and his team do to make sure, for example, that your emails, for example, don't bounce within warm-up, making sure that you have a good reputation with Google or Microsoft. Like all these things have to happen sort of programmatically and correctly to build up the reputation, because if things don't work correctly in the warm-up, then it actually can have a negative impact on your deliverability. So that's why be very cautious on kind of what you do about warm-up, but it's definitely a must-have. And then the final thing I want to say on infrastructure. So when you set up these domains and mailbox, then you warm them up for like 2 to 4 weeks, and then you start sending cold emails. So the reason why you set up these additional sort of domains and mailbox is ultimately you are putting them at risk of them being potentially burnt. So you want to run tests essentially on them, what's called inbox placement tests, where you essentially send them to a batch of mailboxes, whether they're Google, Microsoft, typically, right, mailbox, to see whether they land in spam or not. And that's something that you want to do frequently. I typically advise, if you're having quite a high velocity when it comes to just emails going out, to do it maybe like once a week, once every 2 weeks, because infrastructure maintenance as a topic when you run a lot of emails is just a topic that somebody has to manage. Because a lot of cases, people just go and set up the infrastructure and just like, good luck, and then the infrastructure just burns and the people are like, oh, this is not working. But people forget that there's definitely a topic typically internally that somebody has to own, typically sales ops or RevHub, etc. Infrastructure maintenance is a topic. So warm-up is in that, running placement test, making sure that deliverability is high. It is a topic and somebody has to own that. So yeah, that's on infrastructure. Feel free to leave any questions in there, and we can cover those in a bit. But let's move to the next one, I would say.
One thing I want to say about SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, Mark said is boring, but you have to do that because of deliverability, and I'm keen about security. If you don't do that, I can go and send an email as you. I mean, I can pretend I'm you and steal money from other people. This is called spoofing, etc., all around it, but I'm really keen about security myself, so this is, for me, is a bread and butter. So if you don't do that, people or, competitors, I don't know, who can send email as you and pretend they are you. That's it. So and this is an example. It was today, 4:40, I got an email from OpenAI. It's a real email. Hey, Daniel, everything. He want to sell me, to our team actually, licenses, etc. Real email, see the domain. Exactly as Frank said. So .com, see? So it's real. And if you would like me to stop sending emails, very easy button to find to unsubscribe. So my motivation, if I don't hate them and I love OpenAI, I will click here and not on the button, which is a bit here. I don't show this button, but report the spam. So if you hate someone, click report the spam. If you love them, click here. Okay, so that's it.
Is it actually OpenAI?
Daniel, let's take some questions.
I swear to God, it was, you see, 2 minutes after he called me, call, and then he sent I said, I cannot talk. Can you send me an email? And he sent. I swear to God.
All right, let's take some questions at this point. So we'll go over them very quickly because I think we have a lot to cover. So let's do like 2-3 minutes of questions. So the first question we had is, could you please recommend the best email resellers premium inboxes or something like that to save money on accounts and stay safe? Maybe like 1 or 2 recommendations.
Well, I will be biased because we run email infrastructure. So I will typically recommend our own. You can chat GPT it as well, right? But there's a lot of providers out there. I just said, so just use like at least a couple. That's like something that we preach, like 2 or more essentially. So you can check out on our end. We have a few, but like we provide all the typical, the Googles and the Microsofts and the SMTP shared IPs, SMTP private IPs. Yeah, if you're looking for something was mentioned, whatever provider, I think they provide Google. So like that we also provide Google, so you can choose that. But like it doesn't matter where you sell. I think the one thing that is just a little thing, but like you can set up GIFs in our accounts. We have data to suggest that if you set GIFs actually on a Google account, we do see significant enough of a lift in performance when GIFs are in place. That's a test that we run literally last month. So GIF setting, meaning the image just moves back and forth. People like that, and they are more likely to respond back essentially. So that's just a little tip.
Nice. Let's take one more, and I will kind of create like a mixed question because a lot of people asked about that. So one was about sending from tools like Apollo and Salesloft, what it does to the reputation, what it does to the deliverability and to domain. And then let's mix it with another question, which is using a new domain or a subdomain and how this works.
Sending from the tool is mainly the automation. So the alternative is sending manually from your inbox, which is, I don't think is scalable enough. So the tools just help you if they send from your IP actually, so the deliverability is still on you, right? But let's say you are sending from HubSpot, right? So on HubSpot, you can send newsletters, right? You can send newsletters or all the marketing CRMs, etc. What is happening, you're sending from your domain, but you're sending from the IP of HubSpot. And this is the main goal. And this is something very, very important from HubSpot to keep the reputation of their IP in a good shape. So if you will go, for example, just everyone knows MailChimp. All the beginners go to MailChimp for some reason and want to send cold emails. And MailChimp will ask you, do this prospect that you want to send them subscribe? They want to get email from you? So at the beginning, you will be a liar. So you will say yes. But then they will see the reports of the spam in Google Postmaster and say, hey, you cannot send this. You are a liar. We block your account. Why? Because their IP is very important. So this is the story about the tool. Okay. So the automation tools that normally use your IPs, your domains and everything, so you are responsible for all the reputation and deliverability, but they help you to automate everything and make it much easier. Hope it answers the question.
And let's do quickly the domain versus subdomain, and then we'll continue just because we have a few slides to cover and not much time.
Yeah. It's a deep question, but overall, the behavior of a subdomain as a domain is the same, but we can go deeper. We will see slight differences, but overall is the same. This is what we see.
We typically don't recommend any form of subdomains in cold email, but we do recommend subdomains in inbound traffic. So notifications.salesforge.ai or transactions.salesforge.ai, you set up different subdomains for different flows for inbound traffic, and for outbound, it's only top-level domains. So we don't recommend setting up subs. Do you want to do a test?
We don't have enough time for tests, but on Warmy, and I think also on Salesforge, right? There is a place you can publicly, for free, do a test. I think Itai also sent in the group. You can make a test. You actually send an email from your Gmail, from your Outlook, wherever. You send to our, this is what Frank said, placement test. You send to our Gmails, Outlooks, many providers, and we will show you where you are landed. So better you send the template actually that you are gonna send to your customers or prospects, And this is the placement test, and this is what Frank said, regularly do it every week. And this is how it will look like. So you will see the rate of inbox versus spam in Gmail. G Suite is the paid version of Gmail, Outlook, Microsoft 365, etc. So we have it on Warmy, and I think we have it also on Salesfoge, right, Frank? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Especially if you have never done one, I highly recommend so. It's a maybe awakening call where you call up your IT department to say something is broken. So we covered the infrastructure. I'm gonna go much faster through because it's a copy, but yeah, bad copy or what's in the copy can kill your deliverability, even you have a good one. We have a lot of example customers that you even remember, they inserted this one link and everything was landing in spam because of this one link or this one word. It can literally happen, so very important. So avoid templates, go fully programmatic. Try to essentially make sure your copy is not stale, like change as many variables as possible. Personalize the copy with buyer level signals. A lot of people just put in what they call the seller data in it, like everything about your company, but nothing about the buyer. Try to leverage the signals as much as you can, or information about the contact, not the company, but the contact, go as deep as possible. And the data is available publicly on LinkedIn, on etc. There are different ways to do that. Use a concept called syntax or AI to avoid essentially repetition. So this goes back to kind of avoiding templates. Syntax essentially is saying the same thing, but you use different words like hey, hi, hello. You can read it up online. Super easy to do. Or if what I would typically describe the ultimate approach and where the whole world is headed is the programmatic way of leveraging AI to craft really a unique email in the language of the buyer delivered to them. Subject lines, keep it under 50 subject lines, keep it under 50 words, and try PS. So on subject lines, we also see much better performance if you, for example, you would do lowercase subject lines. It's a bit of a pattern rep, and you would do 2 or 3 max words in the subject lines. We typically see the best performance from that. Just think like, how important emails typically, are written when it comes to subject lines. What do people actually put in there? Keep it under 50 words. This is specifically a recommendation when you're sending to a lot of Microsoft 365 accounts. Microsoft, for some reason, likes shorter emails from a deliverability standpoint. And something that people do not leverage frequently, what I'm seeing is people do not leverage the PS line. What goes into the PS, it just gives you another ability to essentially get a reply, whether you are attaching a checklist or just essentially, or providing something of value in the PS. It just gives you another opportunity to get a reply on top of what's in the main body. Don't do bumps. Follow up with value, or essentially have a different angle in the follow-up email. Mix in other forms of comms, so GIFs, memes, localized content to lift the replies, so it could be videos, etc. Don't do anything that's HTML kind of heavy in the first email. You can do everything that's HTML heavy in the second email, because HTML can also have a negative impact. And then a little bonus, if you actually localize your copy, so you send an email in Hebrew, we see up to 2x relative lift in a localized language rather than in English.
I always see in Hebrew Shalom and then Daniel in English, so it's a bad tool. I don't know what they're using. I immediately ignore it. I don't know why.
But even beginning the email with Shalom will give you a higher reply rate than just saying hi, Daniel. So just think about how you could even do the first, the greeting in the localized. So even that can increase your performance. All right, so this is around the audience. So a lot of companies don't know what the ICP is. So it's kind of, easy thing, but like I always remind everybody, figure out what your ICP is and double down and figure out how
What is ICP? Frank?
ICP is ideal customer profile. You have to be able to figure it out from day 0 of starting your company. Who do you think will buy this stuff? And what is the data there to support in your CRM, etc. Like nailing this is very important. Whenever you go outside of the ICP, you typically start to degrade performance of your infrastructure and results start to go down. To try and stick as close to ICP as possible and find as many lookalikes or similar companies to your ICP. So stick to the ICP as close as you can, because that's how you really drive your company forward. Don't start with a static lead list from databases like Apollo, etc., where you can just pull a list. Always try to lead with a signal. Some form of a signal. Signals essentially give you typically the best performance on top of anything. So like pulling a list from some sort of database is actually one of the worst things you can do when it comes to driving pipeline. So think of things like hiring, funding, tech stack, traffic, communities. There's a lot of different signals. Things like target lookalikes of your best customers. So take your close won accounts in your CRM And against that, find lookalikes, super powerful as a tactic. Then in order to actually penetrate accounts, so like something, people typically think about, account penetration, especially when you're in enterprise sales. And that typically means you have to be reaching out to 2 or 3 contacts, either sequentially or in parallel, to actually drive the pipeline results that you're looking to drive. A lot of people typically just reach out to one contact or essentially one recipient in that company, and that's it. And in a lot of cases, they get it wrong because it's actually somebody else that's responsible for the pain that you're actually solving. Then you definitely want to qualify accounts. So AI can do that, ChatGPT can do that. Is this a B2B account? Is this a SaaS company? Is this a PLG company? Is this a SLG? PLG means product-led growth, sales-led growth. This is something that humans used to do in the past. Only humans could do that. But with LLMs today, you can programmatically qualify accounts, and you can eliminate the disqualified accounts. Super important that you do this, because you're really then going after the right accounts. But essentially think of it this way: every time when you go after the wrong people, you're really degrading your infrastructure, and you're actually doing more damage to your pipeline results than actually good. So all of these tips, when it comes to audience, I highly recommend. These are the top 6 tips I would give you.
Thank you so much, Frank.
And the final thing, this is orchestration. So somebody mentioned about, sending from Apollo, Salesloft, etc. The sending tool, Daniel gave me an example. I also had a customer that I transitioned from MailChimp over to Salesforge. Exactly the thing. Do not use the right tech to send the emails. Some of the things. So a lot of people love to send like 5 to 10 emails. Really bad idea, because with every email that you're sending to a prospect, you essentially, the more emails you send, the more likely they are report you as spam, try to block you, etc. There will be the negative signal coming at you. The smartest actually companies that I know in our space send 1 or 2 emails. That's what they do. And a typical company would send like 5 or something. There's way too much. The breaking point typically from what we're seeing is beyond 3 emails. Essentially, beyond 3 emails is like the red zone. I would call the green zone 2 emails, meaning initial email and a follow-up, and then you would reach out after, say, a quarter again. So it's totally fine to reach out a quarter, but do not blast like a gazillions of emails within a short span of time, because you will be degrading your infrastructure. Use correct pacing. A lot of people love to send 1 email every day or something, like crazy idea. Pace it out, like during the summer, for example, because a lot of people are out of office, send 1 email a week, for example. But typically I would say like 3 to 7 days. When it comes to just specifically cold email performance, when you look at the dashboard, focus only on replies, bounce rate, and opt-outs. These are the 3 things that I highly recommend to focus on. What you're seeing is we're not focusing on open rates. There's multiple problems when it comes to tracking open rates. Highly recommend to stick away. Really focus on what matters and what is trackable and what is valid. Replies, bounce rate, and opt-out rates, super important. And validate emails at every time when you're actually executing a send. So when you're taking a list, let's say for your CRM, Salesforge, it doesn't matter where you take it, and you then decide to, let's say, even recycle after 3 months or 6 months, do not send unless you validate it again, because people come and go in companies. They may have left company. You sending the email and that email bouncing is really bad. Essentially, you don't want to do that. And then in order to understand what works, what doesn't, you always do multivariate testing, essentially. But in every variant, you want to make sure you have at least 1K leads to have any form of statistical significance. And something that I mentioned as a bonus, blend in other channels, because other channels on top of email, your overall results can significantly increase if you actually do multi-channel. So like a lot of people like to look at the email as this is the only channel, that's all we do, and that's it. Really bad thinking. Like typically results in email go significantly higher when other channels are active on top of email. So yeah, that's all.
Frank spoke about everything. This is just a summary for you to take with you, but so many things. This slide, I think I will share with you. And the future where we are going with Warmy is actually all these kind of things to take decisions, what to do and how. We developed AI and machine learning inside Warmy to make a lot of decisions and decide from you, and to consult with other line. And if you will watch me on Shark Tank, I also did this AI machine learning 7 years ago. So right now it's a buzz. Even my grandma, which is not alive, knows what is AI, but I did it a lot of years ago. And as entrepreneurs, me and Frank, seeing the future is where you don't need to do that anymore. And this is why we started Anybiz.io. And Frank also started Salesforge, and inside Salesforge there is a tool for forgetting everything you learned here, Everything will be automated. Everything will be, this is the future. This is where we see the future. Frank do it in his way. We are doing it in our way. We called it AnyBiz. Frank called it Agent Frank. So Frank become
to replace myself.
Yeah. So this is doing email deliverability, sending the emails, decide the frequency, how many to send, what domains, outreach on LinkedIn, phone calls. And this is the crazy thing. This is where we bet that will be the future. And this is where we spend our next efforts and sleeping on it every single day. At Warmy, we decided to give away to the community, so you can use RevHub 25 if you want to get 25% off on all of our plans. So use this coupon code when you check out. Obviously, we have trial on the product, many free tools so you can experience Warmy. Another good thing that Itai already sent in the groups, and I think already 3 people sent to me, I'm not sure, but I need to check. If you do the deliverability test, the placement test that we spoke, and you send it to me, I will schedule with you one-on-one, go over your infrastructure or whatever you are doing to help you and suggest you totally for free to make sure you are on the right track of email deliverability. This is very, very exciting. Some of the people think deliverability is boring, but if you will be an expert, believe me, your pockets will be bigger. So I'm not freelancing on deliverability, but I love, the technology around it, and I will be very happy to help you. Thank you so much for listening. It was really, really exciting. We had 50 people here. And thank you so much for attending. Obviously, people will see it as a recording, and I'm excited talking about it every time, Frank.
Likewise. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. You can surely find us all on LinkedIn and typical places. So yeah.
Thanks so much, guys. For those who want to stay, let's take 1 or 2 last questions. So, guys, why don't you go over the questions? Pick one that you haven't answered yet. Maybe the most interesting one. Promotional email versus cold emails. Someone asked if warming works for promotional email as well, if sending from a Klaviyo, for example. How do you deal with ESPs like Klaviyo, where everyone knows they send promo email?
There is a difference between sending cold emails to like a B2B for businesses or B2C. Let's say you have a Shopify store and you use Klaviyo or other tools to send to customers. So normally people that are using e-commerce, etc., the email they subscribe to them. By the way, I give you a great tip right now. When someone is subscribing to your newsletter, again, I'm keen about security. When someone is subscribing to your newsletter, you have it in the website somewhere, or someone, you collect the email of your potential customer. You have to make double opt-in. So this is my answer to you. You have to make double opt-in. What is double opt-in? They put an email, you send them an email, they confirm. Why? If I'm your competitor, you know what I'm gonna do? I put a lot of spam traps. If you don't do double opt-in, a lot of spam traps. I have a list of thousands of spam traps. I'm gonna put it in your subscribers list, and you're gonna send emails every week. I'm gonna kill your domain. I'm gonna kill your business. Okay?
All right.
There's a final one thing. Is what is the success rate in sending emails? What is considered a good conversion rate? I think that has to do with cold email. So I'm gonna from a cold email lens, because naturally you expect a response. So I would say you should be aiming for anywhere between 2 to 5% reply rate. If it's below 1%, you should be stopping essentially what you're doing. And then within that, so once you get, let's say, 10 replies, 1 or 2 roughly should be positive. If you don't get 1 or 2 positive replies out of 10, again, what's the point of you getting just negative replies? You definitely want to be driving towards positive reply rate. So essentially 10-20% positive reply rate from total replies is what you should be optimizing for. This is considering the conversion rate. So the conversion is booking an actual meeting. So yeah.
All right, Frank, Daniel, thanks so much. I think it was a great webinar. We got lots of questions for everyone. We'll send the deck and we'll try to see if we can facilitate sending the recording as well. Obviously, you have the suggestion to take consultation call with Daniel and the 25% off. Thanks all for joining. Have a good night.
Thanks, Itai. Cheers.
Thank you so much, everyone.